Hi, this is Greg Viti with Real Estate Legends. I'm so excited today to introduce our newest podcast called Chicago Problems Solved. And it's exciting today to have Joshua Bandock, the head of policy at Illinois Policy Institute, a nonpartisan think tank. And also along for the ride is Nick Yassin of Rani Management. They own several buildings and also manage several more on Chicago's north side. Thank you, gentlemen. Hi there, this is Greg Viti with Real Estate Legends. So excited here to be with Nick Yassin and Josh, what's your last name? Bandock. And Josh works with Illinois Policy. Why don't you explain to us what your organization does?
We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit think tank based in Chicago that focuses on policy issues impacting the state of Illinois.
So, as most of our listeners probably know, we have a lot of challenges in Illinois and in Chicago. And every day we're trying to figure out solutions for some of our problems. And a lot of our politicians have talked very well about trying to help things, but yet they seem to be digging us deeper in. Nick and I were just talking about, Nick's group has bought a high-rise and they're deconverting it from condominium to apartments, and they're having to do a lot of renovation. And so, Nick, you're dealing with some challenges, I imagine, in the acquisition of your property and getting it renovated. And do you see some obvious twitches that could be happening to the system that might make this a little easier?
I think there's a lot of things, by the way. Nicholas Yassin, Rani Management, managed Northside Apartments, and this particular building. There's a lot of challenges that are going to be involved with the city, but we always try to meet all those regulations. But a lot of the times it can be a time-based issue. So whenever we're trying to go in, get these permits done, get these inspections, you want to try and do everything in a timely manner. And there's some things that you don't have control over. Elevators being number one. We're revamping the entire elevator system in the building. We're redoing the facade. We're redoing a lot of the infrastructure things that, unfortunately, a lot of the times these condo buildings have a lot of neglect. But with all that, a lot of the things can be solved if we could try and just figure out a way to try and move things along. So in the case of that particular building, it's really just how many things can you do all at once. So.
Well, I know with new construction, the big challenge is trying to get the electric to come out. You might have to ask for the electric a year before you start the project to get it by the time you're ready for the electric. And so you have to be able to pull off development in Illinois, Chicago especially. You have to have experience and you have to know the timelines, or you're just going to get crushed.
Yeah, I can just add to that real quickly. I would say definitely the electrical equipment has been the hardest thing in order to secure. So you do have to order it well in advance of the project, even probably before you're even closing on the building. You may want to consider banking some of this equipment to make sure that you have it sized right, because they changed the regulations in the city where everybody needs to have all electric. So you've now increased the amount of electric load that a lot of these buildings weren't built with or weren't thought to have needed before. So that's a new challenge that you could have gas, but you have to do both. So it's another cost that if you wanted to provide any gas appliances, you then have to build that in. It's actually the water department seems to be the biggest issue in addition to all the electric, because now, because of all the lead pipes everywhere in the city, if you want to try and get a water inspection, you literally have to pay for overtime. They will not come out during the regular hours that they normally would. And even when you do that, you still are going to be set out many weeks in advance. And they always, again, could have the drawings done where it has a specific size that you need. The inspector on the spot could end up saying something else. And that's the problem, is that you could have people contradicting each other, and that happens very often. So any of these inspections that you do, you kind of do want the same inspector, because at least if he tells you what you need, you can then comply with whatever he said and not have a new inspector come out and say, no, I actually would prefer this. And I've had it actually go back and forth with a fire inspector, where one fire inspector wanted the door to open one way, another guy wanted it to open the other way. I had to switch it back twice, and then the third guy wanted it back the first way. So that's another way in which you want to be able to comply, you want to do what's right, and you even follow what could be on the plans. Another just quick side note there, too, about the water department is not only do you have to do that and wait for them to be on overtime, because those water inspectors who have to be on site are doing all the other lead replacements throughout the city. So those might be the ones that they're already scheduled, so that's the only reason that you have to pay for all that overtime. But we've also had it where we've opened up the street on Western Avenue and the pipe was in a wrong position than what was marked, and so we then had to wait and come back another, month later. And every month delayed, again, that all adds up to the cost of housing. So when you're trying to provide housing and any type of affordability of housing, you want to be able to get things done efficiently. And that alone, if you could cut through the efficiencies, would be able to provide the housing built at a lower cost.
So these are the situations with Chicago. We as entrepreneurs, realtors, builders, we feel like there's way too much red tape and there's no urgency and there's no welcome mat. If you want to get a sidewalk cafe, if you want to get a business license, whatever it is, it seems like we're in the land of molasses here. And what that does is it's crushing us. We have so many antiquated things in Illinois, and I'm not even boned up on this, but I know the basics. 854 school districts. That means you have 854 different locations. You have all of these leaders that you have to pay. We need this streamlined. All of these things are just crazy. The way the pensions are not funded, the way they keep giving out pensions. Why don't we have 401ks that are matched? How can people get 2 and 3, 4 different pensions? I mean, I know that this has been maddening to people in Illinois forever, and we've had a lot of really well-to-do, smart business people leave us. So when are we going to stop and just think of what are public policies that we can put in place that make a lot of sense, that people can really feel that fantastic feeling of being a Chicagoan, of being in Illinois, and knowing that you're going to be here forever, because everybody's kind of like willing to sort of sell where they're just halfway out now. And is this what you're finding?
Totally, and happy to keep it broad. We can maybe start with housing and kind of talk about those regulations and expand. But first, I think just the broad point is regulations. So Illinois makes it really hard to do just about anything. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about how that's the case in housing and just in general. There's a think tank that measures like how many instances of restrictive language are in the legal code. That's kind of a wonky thing, but just focus on the numbers for me. So the average is about 130,000. That's really high. Illinois is over 280,000, so it's more than double the average. The best state is Idaho, a little bit more than 30,000, which means that Illinoisans are more than 7 times regulated than Idahoans. It's like, why? And everywhere you look, people are just constrained, and it's hard to do things, including build housing and just about anything else. Start a business, cumbersome on a good day.
I feel like the housing is a great place for us to start,
Yeah.
since it's what Nick and I have been doing. I've been a realtor for 38 years. I've dabbled in a lot of different developments, and I've helped other developers. So I realize that there's the challenges we have. And what's frustrating to me is if someone has a great track record, they're using the same architect, they're building the same building, everything checks out, they've done their EPA. Why does it still take 6 months to a year to get a permit? Why do you bankrupt people? Why do we have to buy land and wait and wait and wait? It is maddening. They have a track record, we know who we're dealing with, stamp it and get them building. We could have hundreds and hundreds of properties right now being built, and that's, just think of all the people that touches. Every property that gets built, it's the appliances, it's the woodwork, it's the builders, it just goes on and on, from the lender, all these things get touched, and we're like in slow motion, like I said earlier, the molasses state. Okay. Has that been your situation when you're going for permits?
Absolutely. You notice that even while you're going in for permits, if the
regulations change, you then have to move very quickly to update your drawings in order to meet those regulations. One being the electric that I mentioned earlier, where all of your appliances have to be able to be met with that electric load, which is just way more than I think if the whole city was to be built like that the infrastructure to do all the electric wouldn't be able to handle the amount of electric that they're now requiring you to do, including electric vehicles, which again, that's all wonderful things, but in practice, it's different than what's happening in reality. So those are the delays that are going to occur in the middle of the permit process.
But I think part of the problem is the people who are making the ordinances have never built anything. Many of them have never even owned a property, let alone been the housing provider or had their butt on the line to pay the mortgage when a tenant leaves them. And so, to me, of all the frustrating things that we have in housing, the most frustrating is the tenant landlord ordinance. Because I know it was put in there with the best of intentions. But when you see what these judges have to do to the housing providers, someone's been squatting in their place for 6 months, broken up the whole place that was renovated when they got it, not paid any rent, and that person might get 3 times the security deposit back because they didn't put street on the address of their home. It's outrageous. And they already know that these people have done this 5 times, but they still allow it. How is that possible? We're trying to get home ownership to people. You're a first-time buyer. You buy a building that's a 3-flat and you need every penny to pay your mortgage, and you get caught with one of these squatters, and then you get in front of a judge that this professional is able to push it off for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. They've lived for a year for free, and then all of a sudden you have to pay them too. You're bankrupting people. So not only chasing them out of Illinois, but one, they're not going to have a very good feeling about home ownership or wanting to own a property. So there's got to be balance and fairness in all this, but there has to be logical sense, and I feel like that's what we're not seeing with a lot of these laws and rules, because the people who are making them don't have the experience to really make those decisions. So why can't we make this, instead of an us and them, a we, where we all help each other? So the politicians start talking to the housing providers. The housing providers really giving good quality help. Most of them are so frustrated, and they don't want to get their name out there because they got too much to lose. And so that's another thing that's frustrating, to me, and I'm sure most of the people in this industry.
Can I make one quick comment? It's like exactly what you said. Taking security deposits is what I used to do my entire life, until obviously the RLTO has made it so difficult. In fact, if you commingle any of the funds or you don't put the right amount of interest, there are some bad people out there that maybe aren't going to follow the rules. But let's just say, even if you paid 1 penny more in interest, you still could be liable for 3 times the rent. So imagine that. You made one mistake by you gave them too much money. And that was the thing that a lot of people then turned and said, all right, we can't be taking security deposits anymore. And that's why pretty much they've gone away. All we need is the right to cure. If you had the ability that if you were presented with some kind of an issue, that you had 14 days to cure that issue, that would allow more people to be able to start taking security deposits. And you want the security deposit because, unfortunately, there are issues like what you just described. They could even be stealing the appliances, they ruined the apartment, they've lived there for whatever. And that's the issue, is that I actually would be more comfortable if we could go to a system like that. But the city doesn't allow that because you don't have this right to cure. So the minute that you get served with any type of paper, you already know you're going to lose. There's not even a chance that you might as well even try and defend it. And a lot of the times, it's the smaller housing providers that have done this, where they don't know, they walk into a situation, and that's why it makes it way more difficult.
They're using logic and reasoning.
Correct.
Thinking that, well, I've been good the whole time, the system's going to treat me fair. No, I had a friend of mine who had to pay $30,000, 3 times the security deposit, because she didn't put her daughter's name on the lease. I have a client I just listed the house yesterday, where the tenant not only took the dishwasher and the air conditioner, but also took the back deck. I was like, the back deck? Lender won't lend on this unless you put your deck back. You gotta walk up the stairs. So there's a lot of challenges, and I would really like to see it where they start making sense. That's what we're looking for, is just reasonable and a timelines. Like the timelines, obviously, when you have a bureaucracy, maybe you're not incentivized to work hard. Well, that's crazy. They got to change the pension system. They've got to incentivize these people somehow or something. There's got to be something that's positive for them to do a good job, because right now I think they're getting about a C-. Okay, and we're not looking for A's even. We're looking.
Businesses and anybody who wants to create value, grow jobs, provide more housing in the city. And unfortunately, much more of the case is that there's an unwelcome that. I was speaking to a group of housing folks in Lincoln Park last fall, and I said to them, I don't know how you do it. So let me just give you 2 examples of business ordinance that was proposed, luckily has been tabled. I was going to testify on it. There is a proposed ordinance that businesses are not allowed to cover more than 25% of their window space with signs. And if they do cover more than 25% with signs, like things like pictures of the food you serve, realtors, properties, banks, things like this. I was looking at just business on Clark Street the other night. If you have too much signage, the police can knock on your door, and they could say you have too much signage, and we're going to fine you $500 a day until you take it down. So it's like, talk about an unwelcome match for business.
Well, especially if you wrap your place like a Sopranos or whatever,
Yeah.
they're in for sure.
And then let's just take a housing example, something we were talking about just a little bit ago before we went on camera, the Affordable Requirements Ordinance.
No,
So
the unaffordable.
well, right. So this is the thing that, like, we do have a housing affordability crisis in Chicago. Happy to talk about that more. One of the understandable intuitions would be, well, maybe we should mandate affordability. So in Chicago, we've tried that for 21 years. Increasingly in 2003, 2007, 2015, and 2021, the city has ratcheted up affordable requirements. Basically, what is now required is that in buildings of 10 plus units that require any kind of zoning change, so new or to be rezoned, 20% of those units have to be offered at an affordable price.
And there's like 5 workarounds they have to make sure that if you didn't do the zoning change, they're gonna have to do it anyway because you're in this area. I mean, doing one right now. We're sorry. I try to visualize a vacant lot there. I try to visualize. I call an architect. I have them get plans for it. I try to pitch people on it. So I'm trying to do my little part. But I know that we're all very smart people and we all have the potential to do this. Mike, how would you say we get these people together to make this a different city?
I mean, if you're talking about anybody who wants to jump into real estate just has to have somebody be able to guide them. A first-time person needs to be able to talk to somebody who has the resources. And generally joining the neighborhood groups, the MBOA, those are wonderful ways for people that want to get into this to understand what are the challenges. Because even myself, I've built an ADU and it was very difficult. And there's a lot of things that you have to do. And honestly, there could be more if they didn't have more regulations when you even want to build more than one. Because there's a lot of buildings where you can build several. And if you're already there, you might as well do more. But the way that I think the best way to get involved is to talk to people who are educated, who have been through these things, and just getting awareness of where these groups are, when they meet, and what can be done. And even if they don't necessarily have the investment today, there's a lot of things that you need to do. And I don't think there's anything that you're going to buy or like go to a seminar that's going to teach you anything. I think it's the real world experience that you get through any of the developers or housing providers. That's the best way that I think.
So when he said ADU, he's talking about additional dwelling units. They're allowing in certain locations. There's been pilot programs where if you get 1 or 2 of these units are allowed per block. You can put it in over the garage. Over the garage, way too expensive. You got to bring the sewer line out. It's like building another house is $250,000 off top. Now, doing the additional dwelling units in the basements, especially of multifamily buildings, make a lot of sense. A lot of them have huge ceilings.
That's right.
And they've got light. And we've been working on this for the last 12 years.
And LA allows them, since I think maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, there's been an explosion of ADUs in LA, like well over 10,000. Chicago kind of sort of barely allowed them a couple years ago, and there have been, I think, like fewer than 100. It's a tiny number.
I did want 1 or 2 of those, but like the issue there is if you can build more in a building, you're not allowed to build more than one without again triggering an affordability. You build the second one, all of a sudden now you've got this affordability requirement, which does not work because
it makes it unaffordable.
It was difficult to build the first one. So anyway,
totally, that's another example of an attempt to mandate affordability just reduces supply and makes housing unaffordable.
I think another thing is you've got certain corridors where mixed use makes a lot of sense. You want to have community, you want to have commercial, but you've got a lot of corridors where it was zoned a long time ago for stores, but there's no stores, and so you have these vacant, blighted-looking storefronts, and I count hundreds of them in all different neighborhoods. And why not allow those to be residential? A lot of them have really high cool ceilings. They were stores.
I can say, first of all, I've done that, and I've also could tell you why I think in certain neighborhoods where you see vacant storefronts, which doesn't make any sense, having the commercial storefronts, I have about 120 in which I manage. So you see a lot of these are mom and pop tenants. They just need a chance. But how are they supposed to do the construction, wait through their permitting process, wait through their licensing process? It is such a long period of time. I've seen it, and it's heartbreaking when you have somebody who's saved up enough money to be able to secure the space, already has to pay rent even past the abatement period, which I always try to give them as much help as I can, and they just can't get their licensing or can't get their permit, and they already have been trying for 6 months and they can't make it.
So there
That's
you
the reason why
can't
they give their
you can't get it if you're going for commercial.
Yes.
And so then you have this long-term vacancy, and so then you try to go to make it residential, and the hoops you have to
And the
jump through
zoning
are
process,
system.
the issue is you got to then change the zoning.
So
So now you
that-
can change the zoning to make it residential, and that's the issue.
Why can't it
And-
just be an adjustment? Why does it have to be a change of zoning? Why do we have to make
It should be an adjustment or a variance. That would go so much
You
quicker.
know what it
than a
reminds me
zoning
of?
change.
It reminds me of when you're a little kid and you come up with great ideas and your parents always say, "No, absolutely not. You can't do that." No. The reason we can't change the way we've done because we've always done it this way. Well, that's the perfect reason to
But
change
do you
it.
know that there actually was something that in doing this research and having converted one of these storefronts into a residential, it is interesting that I think back in the 50s there actually was a program that the city allowed you to do that, just no problem. It was only until they didn't allow this ADU, which I think whenever that law came into effect, that's when they didn't allow these storefronts to be converted. There are some buildings that I bought that were non-conforming storefronts that were done prior to when this had gone into effect. So it had been thought of before. Why we are not just bringing it right back to let any storefront to be converted to residential? So much better for the senior population. If you're only talking about what's it easier, I don't need any stairs, I'm already on the same grade, wheelchair access, whatever it is, those are going to be things that a storefront would be able to provide if it turned into housing.
And there was, in April or March, there was an ordinance that passed City Council that makes it easier to convert first floor commercial space to residential space. So it's a little bit easier now, and the default is still really hard to do these
If
things.
you have to change the zoning on the whole building,
Yeah.
that's a non-starter.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. You have to pay for zoning attorney. You have to go to courts.
Yeah.
You have to do things that the normal person would not do.
Yeah.
We're all very busy people. Most people on the earth right now have the patience of about like this. And when you're dealing with these bureaucracies, just like I have a friend of mine, the guy's incredible. He's done 2 of these tax, the tax credit sales, and he's built 2 buildings. Well, he had to have 500 grand to put on his line, and he was about to lose the whole thing. You know, I mean, and the paperwork's like this to get it done. So why does it have to be like that? Well, I know we're rambling on now. I don't want to make this where no one watches us. Do you want? Is there anything else that you think that we really need to cover that we missed?
Well, I would just, look, there is lots of cause for frustration in housing and in general in Chicago, and I think that the North Star has to be housing abundance, that we want more housing of all shapes and sizes to meet diverse needs, and that means we got to increase supply, and the only thing that has to happen is the government has to just stop making it so hard for people like you to do what you want to do. Because somehow some things still happen, but not many, and more people are leaving and saying no mas to Chicago. If the city just gets rid of a lot of these regulations.
Gets out of their way.
Exactly.
Get out of their own way. Get a welcome mat.
Totally.
Try to really make it exciting to bring businesses to Chicago. Have something that's, have like a guarantee.
Yeah.
Well, if you put everything on the forms that we gave you, we promise you within 45 days you will be approved, or we'll give you $500 or something. I mean, come on.
It should be automatic.
It should be
approved.
automatic. It should be automatic
If
approved.
it's not approved within X number of days, 45 or 60, you are automatically approved.
That would be wonderful.
Boom, done. Because the cost isn't simply in what it is to build the building itself, the structure. It's all the time you're waiting. It's you have to get the lawyers, the time that you
It's
spend.
called holding costs.
Yeah.
Those are the costs that you have to calculate in the total project cost, which then gets calculated into the rent in which you must hit in order for the whole project to be viable. And that's the issue, is that if you could find a way to streamline that process, move things along much quicker, have somebody actually respond in a timely manner. But there are so many different hoops that you jump, there's so many different desks in which that permit goes in a circle, and somebody doesn't like something, it could go all the way back around.
Well, I sold a property on where Tenenbaum Hardware was. My buddies built 34 units there. And so I called him and said, so how did it finally go down? He said, well, we were impressed that it took so long for us to get everything that we achieved much higher rents than we thought we would, that we penciled out. Like, yeah, how were your construction costs? Oh, we got crushed on the construction costs. It was totally upside down. So I know it looks like it's just a simple, easy play for these big developers and housing providers. I can promise you it's not. That it's like he said, less than 6% oftentimes is the margin that they're working off of.
And that's why you don't see cranes all across the sky. That's a great observation. That's why you don't see it. And if you just got rid of a lot of these unnecessary regulations, because most of them are necessary, cranes would go up.
Here's an idea, Chicago housing, building department. Client of mine, who you know very well, he's an architect. He went to do a large building in Cleveland, and he said, Greg, it's unbelievable. They gave me a concierge. They walked me through every department. Within a week, I had everything settled. So there. It's possible. Other people are doing it. We're not trying to say that you can't get it done because we see all the buildings that have been built, and thank you for all those. But my gosh, this red tape that we're stuck in, this molasses is gotta end, and you guys are a big part of it. So I don't know what you have to do to streamline it. If you need Mike to come down and be a consultant, I'm sure he'd be happy to. So this is Greg
We
Viti.
have a bundle of policy recommendations.
This is Greg Viti from Real Estate Legends. This is our first policies talk. I'm so excited to be with two fantastic gentlemen like yourselves. Thank you for coming out, and talk to you soon.